Today I'm talking to Nick Accordino. Nick and I met at Red Hat a long time ago. Nick was working somewhere in finance and was trying to help me get some stuff done. And Nick helped me to bust the story that dealing with people in finance was difficult. Fast forward a few years, we ended up coaching together for about 6 months. And toward the end of that time, Nick found out that his job was disappearing. So we thought it'd be fun to have a conversation about what it's like to get laid off, what that process is like, how Nick went through that process, and how he came out on the other side. So welcome, Nick. How are you doing today?
Hey, John. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well. So what's going on these days? Where do you find yourself?
Yeah, right now I find myself at a little company here in the Triangle, North Carolina, called Be Downtown. I'm working as a partnerships manager and working to basically connect companies that we work with to set up events and different types of like programming. And the whole business is we set up beehives at corporate campuses and then do lots of employee engagement types of programming around that year round. So that's what I'm up to these days. Yeah.
What's in it for a company to have a beehive at their campus?
I mean, besides for like the pure joy of having
getting
bees,
stung.
yeah, yeah. So there's that. Yeah. So I mean, these corporate campuses are typically pretty big, a lot of real estate, and they have these open spaces, and so there's I guess an environment ripe for bees, but also there's employees who are looking for different ways to connect and do some team building and some bonding in different ways. And so it's a way to not only utilize the physical space, but sort of use that as a jumping off point to bring people together, spark some connection, spark some joy. And really, it's like this opportunity to sort of like learn a little bit of a lesson from how bees work, teamwork principles, lots of biomimicry sort of lessons to be learned there and shared.
So how involved does this get? I mean, and I know there's like cooking classes and stuff. Like, do you like put on all the little white suits and the smoke thing and like take the beehives apart?
We do that, yeah.
Really?
We do tours, yeah. So most of my teammates are beekeepers, and they lead those tours. And it's really like very hands-on, very kinetic, and yeah. I mean, you're in there learning kind of all different parts of a beehive, different types of bees. And then we have other sort of more hands-on programming that's like, I guess, less close to the bees, I guess I would say, but more like bee products. So beeswax candles, different sort of honey related honey tastings or honey camp as we call them. So there's lots of lots of different ways to go to, I guess, different directions to go in, but it all starts with the bee and the power of sort of the hive mind or colony. Yeah.
It sounds like the whole product life cycle.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they're pretty integral to what us humans sort of rely on from a food perspective. So yeah.
Now, this is totally different than what you were doing before. If I recall correctly, you were like doing ServiceNow or something for Red Hat IT or something.
Yeah, I've had a few different careers, I guess, before that, but this is completely different than what I was doing before. Yeah, that's right.
So it's April 2023. You get the email, the text, the whatever that says, I'm guessing, come to a meeting of some sorts, and you find out you don't have a job. What happens next?
It's oddly quiet. I felt like it was like an overwhelming sort of quietness, at least for me. And I don't know if it's like that like intense sort of focus or like attention that you put on that moment, but it all felt very quiet. And I think for me, because we've been working together, it's a lot of just recalling and sort of leaning into in that moment. Who am I? Like, what do I do? How am I supposed to act in this moment? Almost like finding your feet a little bit. But that's how that first few hours or first day felt. Yeah.
And then did you immediately like have to clean out your cube or whatever, or how did all that go?
Virtual cube, I guess. Yeah. We didn't really have at one point in time at Red Hat, I had a desk, like an assigned desk, but that was years before. So I don't think I had anything at the office, just my at home office. But yeah, so that felt a little bit funny. Like, yeah, I had my laptop and my I guess other work items, but those would soon be going back to Red Hat. So yeah.
And what was the process that you went through, like from and so strike that. So from the time you got laid off in April, how long before you found new work?
It was about 9 months.
And what was that process like?
It was at times a roller coaster and at times a waiting game. There's a lot of different things that happened in those 9 months. But yeah, I think for me, like because I knew I wanted to either, I guess I had multiple paths to go on to sort of follow. I either wanted to continue on a path, do a bit of a tangent or something completely different. And I think in those 9 months, I tried a little bit of all the above with varying degrees of success. Um, but yeah, like over the course of those 9 months, I really tried a bunch of different things and um, really put myself out there and various forms of my resume and um, yeah, I guess my professional career at that point out there.
What was the most unusual thing you did?
The most unusual thing I did was probably I started volunteering at a local tourism office. So I live in Durham, and I've always taken an interest in just what's happening around town, what's new, what's upcoming, and this organization Discover Durham is part of the tourism office for the city of Durham, and I reached out to them, and they had an opening on Tuesdays, and so for a good amount of time, I was there most Tuesday afternoons, volunteering my time with people who are coming to visit our city here. That was probably the most out there thing I did, just because I hadn't worked in tourism before, and yeah, but I really enjoyed that. It was like something that brought me a lot of joy. So yeah, that was probably like the most out there thing that I wouldn't have otherwise done.
And how did you find that?
I think I found it through like a local volunteer, like sort of matching. I forget what the site is called, but like a local volunteer matching site where it's organizations, majority like nonprofit that are looking for volunteers, and then people who are volunteering looking for either specific causes or specific days of the week in which they can volunteer. And that's how I found that opportunity. I found other opportunities on there too, mostly like creek cleanups and garbage cleanups for like green spaces and other maybe like sustainability aligned organizations that are in and around the area that I also volunteered with. But that's how I found this opportunity.
What was the lowest, hardest part of this 9 months?
I think for me, the lowest, hardest part was pursuing opportunities that I thought would excite me or would speak to what I wanted to do, and I and being so laser focused on them, um, and either getting far along in the process and talking myself into thinking I am a good fit for this, or this is maybe potentially like a landing spot for me. Um, and going through that process several times, some of those opportunities now with like hindsight and some distance from them probably wouldn't have been great fits for me. But yeah, the time and energy and all the things you sink into each of these opportunities is not insignificant. And I think just the mental game of pouring so much in there, and in this process, there's I think I came back to this sort of phrase where it's little to no reward. So many times you don't get a lot of feedback, or you don't even get much of a human response after getting to know some of these folks as you interview with them. And Some of the rejection messages or notes that you get can feel pretty cold. And so I think multiple points felt pretty low just going through that process and committing so much of myself and like just yeah, I guess my energy towards these different opportunities and not feeling like there's a lot of reward on the other side. So that felt probably, if I think about low or lowest points, those there's a few of them in there. Yeah.
And were you mostly applying? What was the context of companies that you were applying to?
I see. I think my career at that point was like a fairly generalist sort of finance or operations professional, and so there's a lot of companies that have roles like that. So bigger companies, some here in the Triangle, but some that were advertising remote jobs. Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess it was mostly companies looking for generalists, but that's sometimes hard to tailor your skill set or your experience to those types of roles, and also knowing that you're probably one of quite a large number of applicants. So that's I guess to give like a general answer of like of most of the jobs I was applying to, that's about the direction I was looking.
Were they local or remote?
Some were local, but a lot of them were not initially. There was a point in my search where I shifted back towards local, and that's where I had some success in terms of like landing interviews, or at least talking to humans about like opportunities that might be coming up, or just really some of the networking conversations. Those seem to be much easier to get started with local companies. Um, and then towards the end of my search, I got very like hyper local, just only within a 15, 20, maybe 25-minute radius of my home, or like or where I'm at here in North Carolina. So yeah, different phases of my job search, not always local, but became very local towards the end.
So would you, because I have heard from other people that when they started focusing on local things, they started to get more traction versus the black hole of LinkedIn or, applying for jobs at the places online.
Yeah, some of the job boards can feel hard because um it feels like there's so many job opportunities and you don't know which ones are real, and which feels weird to say, but like it just feels like a lot of them are copy paste like job descriptions. So it's hard to tell. And also like some of the third party things, like if I'm not seeing it on a company's website that they're looking for someone with this role, you sort of become a little bit skeptical as to like, is this an opportunity, or is this just like an old job posting or one that doesn't hold water? So it became a little hard, some of those job boards, to really understand what's a real opportunity that's worth like putting my time and effort into it versus um, another thing to sort of watch the number of applicants rise again and again every like hour or so.
And what led you in the direction of really getting specific locally?
Some of it was just some of the, I think, the natural feedback I was getting, either by way of not landing many opportunities with my original search, and some of it was just tapping in with my local network and saying, um, what's something that I'm passionate about that I feel like I could have an impact on, like in my community. And in order to do that, it's sort of shifting my focus back towards, well, who's doing that around me? And I think, yeah, so I maybe came at it from a couple different ways, but both of those paths sort of pointed towards who are the companies nearby who are, I think lining up with my values, or like what I would like to do with my career, and how are they doing that work, or like what opportunities career wise are they offering for folks to sort of join that mission and join a team. So um, yeah, I guess those are the two ways in which I sort of came to that realization that the path I probably need to be on is a more localized path.
So it sounds like the longer the job search went on, the more specific and pickier you got. Is that,
Yes.
which sounds kind of ironic.
That's accurate. Yeah.
The story I would make up is if I was not, if I was at the 8 or 9 month mark, I would be thinking, oh my gosh, I'll just take anything that's out there. But I hear you doing the opposite.
There was a little bit of that feeling, but it's hard when how do I say this? It's hard when even like just like became like even just like getting in the interview door became hard. So I guess there's in some ways I was pickier, but also in other ways I was becoming more and more just like open to um, just really any opportunity that might be out there. But um, yeah, I guess in some ways I did become more picky though.
And it paid off.
It did very much pay off. Yeah.
Now, tell me about working at the grocery store. I remember talking to you at one point, and I don't remember if it was email or just a quick conversation, but I remember you saying, John, I'm working, like, I'm driving the forklift and I'm working at this grocery store. How did that fit into this whole process?
Yeah, it became where I can sort of just be a busybody, and so with nothing to do at home for so long, and you really just can't be applying for jobs like for that many hours. Like I just needed to be out of the house, and so I
In a given day, like, what was the average amount of time that you could meaningfully, like, apply and correspond with people before you're just like, it was worthless?
I mean, yeah, it's almost like a full work day. I feel like that's where I sort of topped out. Like, whether that's how I viewed it as like sort of a job, or I mean, sometimes it's like each cover letter or each sort of email becomes like sort of a mini assignment. And it's like, all right, well, I know these people are probably working just normal hours. If I can get this to them by end of day and I found the opportunity at lunchtime, I've got like 3 or 4 hours to sort of spin up a new resume, a new cover letter, and try and find a couple contacts that I think I either have mutual connections with, or maybe an interesting path in by way of a LinkedIn message. So became sort of like mini assignments, but I think there's two ways to look at it, John. So it's like almost like a full work day, but also kind of like how many of those repetitive work days can you do? And so like after maybe like two or three, maybe three and a half of those work days in a row, you're like, I'm not sure that I can how much more I can give to this in this week. And so
Mm-hmm.
so there's also like a yeah, in terms of just like a number of days, also like again and again going back to that same routine, it can be pretty pretty exhausting.
Well,
Yeah.
I've heard some people say they do like a couple hours a day, like two or three max,
Yeah.
and then that's it, which I think is a surprise to some people because some people feel like, well, gosh, I was working 8, 9, 10 hours a day, so now I have to look for a job 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And I was out of work, like, I think in between college semesters or something, a very long time ago, and
Yeah.
it was depressing. It was hard. So
It's really hard. Yeah.
yeah, so
I mean, there were some days I was tapped out after a couple hours where it just you just don't have sort of like the emotional capacity to do any more than that. Yeah.
okay, so you realize you need to get out and do something. You apply to a grocery store. Like, how does that all go?
Yeah, I had worked at this grocery store in high school and in college, and I knew it was something that I enjoyed then, even though I'm at a very different stage in my life now. But yeah, it was about to be the holidays, and we didn't have any plans to really go anywhere this past holiday season. So I yeah, applied and basically had my old job back from yeah, high school and college, working at a grocery store, unloading trucks, stocking produce, and it was, I would say, equal parts fun, but also equal parts confusing sometimes. Like, what am I doing here? But also just like on the surface, a pretty fun job and pretty light in terms of like I'm not taking work home with me. I'm just showing up, doing my thing. People are going to buy the produce, and next day I'll have to restock the shelf again. And so it's sort of there's a there's something sort of almost um, meditative about like the repetition to it, or the I guess the cyclical nature of grocery shoppers, and how you sort of restock the shelves. So yeah.
Well, why I'm laughing over here because I'm thinking, gosh, there's probably like no Google Docs to annotate. Like, did they even give you an email account?
No, no. Yeah. I had no email to check. Yeah. Um, yeah, it was, and so yeah, I guess for that it was like a little bit refreshing. There's literally nothing to take home with you at the end of the workday.
Are there regulars in the produce department? Like, do you start to see a pattern of like the same people?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Really?
yeah. And because I like to, I like to cook and I also like to talk to people. I would ask folks what they're making with a particular
I love it.
um, pepper or like a mushroom, a different variety of mushroom. Like what are you making with that? And so yeah, I definitely got to know a couple people in terms of like regular shoppers who would come in and were very willing. People want to share like their recipes and what they're making, and they want to share in that experience. And I want to be part of that too. So that's why working in produce is fun.
So, how did the it's called Be Downtown? Is that what your current company
Yeah.
is? So, how did that come about?
That came about after so I'm working at the grocery store, taking an actual break from my job search process for I want to say almost a month. So right before Thanksgiving, I stopped searching for jobs. Had actually logged Yeah, I actually had logged out and deleted the LinkedIn app and a couple of apps from my phone and took a really hard stop break.
Wait, say more about this. So, you consciously stopped looking for a job.
Yes, I did. It became just the sort of grueling, unrelentless sort of nature of it became just yeah. I didn't want to do it, even though I had to do it, and so I used the opportunity to just take a break. I mean, working at a grocery store is vastly different than what I was doing before, but like making a little bit of money and being part of a team again, and just feeling like almost like you're almost plugging plugging in your phone when it's like on low battery mode and you're watching it kind of go down. I just needed to sort of recharge and be present with my family during the holidays, and it felt really good to just unplug from that, like in mid November. And then I had planned to take about a month break, and so right before Christmas, very casually started to look for jobs, and so that about month period from mid-November to mid-December was a planned break where I needed to just unplug and then reshape my mindset a little bit about how I was going to plug back in and sort of refocus on the job search.
So, what was the new approach you took when you started up again?
I noticed that there were some business leaders within like Durham and the surrounding Triangle area that had small startups. A lot of them were sustainability, either aligned or focused in some way, and that's always been a passion of mine, but never had, I guess, roles or worked maybe at like companies where that was the main focus. And so how do I take something that's a passion of mine or like is a project I'm doing off on the side in my personal life? How do I maybe tailor my skill set or my experience like with that focus in mind? And so I started to just follow along on LinkedIn, some of these posts from local startups, what they were doing. One of those posts had, I think it was like 15 or 20 companies that are worth checking out in the area, doing cool things. Just kind of like a blast of like, here's who they are, here's what they're up to. And they may or may not be hiring, but they're worth just at least, doing like a sort of a digital knock on the door on each one. And so that's what I started to do. I just would every couple of days kind of like go through and do some deep reading and research on each of these companies. And I think it was like, I don't know, I want to say like maybe 2 days before Christmas, I was here doing that on Be Downtown, and they had just posted a job an hour before that. And I was like, oh, that's like feels very serendipitous. And so followed that curiosity and It's the role I have now, the partnerships manager position. And, I've always considered myself to be in partner roles, whether I'm the partner or the one organizing partners, and very sort of people-centric roles. And so I got to work on kind of tailoring my professional sort of experience into this very local company that has a strong sort of sustainability mission and focus, and taking my experience and what I have is just like a passion for these kind of things, and pouring it into a very direct set of resume and cover letter and other materials.
What do you think the chances of finding this would have been if you had just continued to grind it out and not taken that month off?
I think I would have missed it. I mean, the chances of me, I guess, finding it or happening upon it are just so um, slim. I mean, the traffic, the noise that's just coming at you when you are signed up for all the job alerts, for all the different things, it's really distracting. Like your mind really can't compute all that. And that's why there's lists and short lists of things that are tailored for your interest, but you're never going to see every opportunity. So I think me taking that pause and literally shutting off the valve of all that information coming, just like sort of blasting my direction, allowed me the space to, again, be picky, be very choosy about how I was engaging, or who I was engaging. And I don't think I would have found it with my first approach of search anywhere and everywhere for jobs. So yeah, I definitely would have missed it.
What I hear there too is the slowing down, and then trying something different. What you had done up until November wasn't yielding anything. So instead of doubling down on what wasn't working, you took a break.
Yeah, I mean, I both needed the break, and it gave me like the chance to really reset and have a entirely different approach. Mostly because the air approach was not working. Yeah.
Based on all of this, what advice would you have for someone in your stage of your career, maybe even in your area, maybe to other people from Red Hat? Like what advice would you have in terms of what to do, what you learned, anything?
Yeah, I think for me, it was more, I guess, it was more rewarding, and I just felt more confident in the conversations I was having when I was showing up and sort of being true to myself, my values, the things that were important to me. It's now very easy to see a job, take a resume, hit apply, and you sort of adding to the noise a little bit. But when you're showing up as maybe your authentic self, and you're putting words on the page that mean a lot to you, and that mean a lot to the other person that you're applying to for a job, or that goes for whether you're applying for a job or making a connection, or connecting with an old friend. Like, if you mail it in, that other person will probably see that, and I'm not sure how willing they'll be to follow up or reply back to you. But I think if you're putting your authentic self on the page, um, or even just breaking through in a different way that allows yourself to show up, that's where I had the most success. And so, um, you know, could I have done that more? Yeah, it's kind of an interesting question. If I look back, like, well, why wasn't I doing that for all of them? It's because I think it takes a lot of energy to do that. You're kind of vulnerable. You're putting yourself out there, um, and it takes a lot of energy to do that. But um, I also think the machines that are sort of set up within this job market right now are set up for speed and not necessarily for like deep connection. And so I guess that would be my advice, is like try and find ways in which you can display who you are, what's unique about you, what your skill set is, um, and see if you can make that human connection that would spark another human conversation, rather than adding to the general noise of applications and resumes and all that.
Well, I also hear that you were doing that even in the form of the volunteering work that you were doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and the beauty of that like volunteer opportunity was you literally had no idea who was going to walk in the door. That's the whole point of a tourism office, that, people are there looking for any and all information, and you don't know when they're coming, you don't know where they're coming from, but they're there in that moment. And so you have to be quick on your feet and figure out in a couple questions at most, like how you can make a connection and find out what's important to them, what would make their day a little bit brighter, or even just send them in a literal direction that would make their experience unique or memorable. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I would also advise, like, if you're feeling like a little bit stuck, just being in scenarios where you're within community or with other people, and even trying on some new hats that you would not normally try on, just spark some creativity, spark some different direction for yourself.
And underscoring getting out of the house.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy being outside, but it's different to be outside and with other people than just outside. So
any other parting words of advice, encouragement for anyone out there that's going through the same thing that you've gone through here?
Yeah, I would say that there's many of us that have gone through this, and it's not fun. It's not always rewarding, but that it's really best if you can figure out how to stay true to yourself and get that on the paper, and make some human connections. And I'm a human who's very willing and open to connect. And so if you want to reach out to me for more information about my journey, or if you just want someone to listen to you about your journey, I'm all ears for that. So yeah, just to say, like, I guess overall, I guess as a lasting or parting thought is that you are not the only one going through this, and it's not fun, but but there are opportunities out there, and yeah, and people who are willing to help.
And when you say LinkedIn is the best place to find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. It's back on my phone. So I'm logged back in, and I don't post a ton, but I am on there, and I am engaging with former colleagues, friends, and yeah, I would love to hear from other people who are in a similar boat or similar journey.
All right. Well, I hope people will take you up on that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to The John Polster Show. Notes, links, and all that other good stuff for this episode are at johnpolster.com/podcast. Send your questions, ideas, or a simple hello to podcast@johnpolster.com. Want to stay up to date on new episodes and receive notifications of upcoming events? Register your email address at johnpolster.com/updates.